Hi, I'm Adam from Impact Gamers and welcome to Retro Remakes. We're going to be making a version of Atari's 1977 PONG, but we've called it POING. This has been designed and made by Connor, and we've added in a CPU for player 2 if they want, or you can play against a human, and also a bonus shot so that when you are losing, you have a greater chance of being able to fight back. So, as soon as we get a point, there we go. Let's begin the tutorial. So I've loaded up Clickteam Fusion 2.5, the free edition, and we're going to start making the game. To begin, we're going to click on File and New to start a new application. And we enter the storyboard editor where we can see all the frames, that's our levels, laid out, and we've just got one of them. To enter it, I'm just going to select it, and that allows me up here to choose the frame editor. If I click on that, this is what the player will see. Everything in the white box will be visible to the player, and the grey area is outside of the play area. It's not the right size. I'm going to enlarge it a bit. Now, to enlarge it, I want to enlarge the whole game. So clicking here on Application 1 allows me to load up the Properties window down here and allows me to go to the window settings, and I've got size. So I'm going to change that to 858 by 525 pixels high. And I can just press enter on the keyboard and it will ask me if I want to make the frames the same size. So this frame will adjust to be the same size. Yes. And there we go. This is much better layout for a Pong style game, a bit more widescreen. You can choose whatever numbers you like that will fit on your screen. So next we're going to insert a new object. So at the top, insert new object. This will be our paddle, sort of the bat, and it'll move. So we want it to be active. Press OK and click to put down. Now, it won't have any movement associated with it. It will stay static. That's still. So if we go to the Properties window and click on Movement and change the type from static, we click on the word static and change it to 8 directions. Now if we test our frame, run our level, we can run the frame and you'll see here it is. And if we use up and down, we can see we can move up and down, but we can also move left and right. And we can also leave the screen. And finally, we also don't want to use the arrow keys. So those 3 things will change. So close your test application. Make sure it's closed so that we can do the next part. And we're going to go back into our application properties. So if we click on it here, you'll see that our properties changes back to application 1. And we can choose runtime options. These are the rules and events that happen while we're playing the game. And right at the bottom, underneath initial score and initial number of lives, we've got default controls. Press edit. Player 1 is in this column here, and I'm going to be using keyboard. You can choose joystick if you want, but I haven't got joystick connected at the moment, so I'm going to choose keyboard. And I'm going to choose up as W, down as S, left as A, and right as D. And I'm happy with everything else. For player 2, I'm going to leave it as up, down, left, and right. Okay. So that's the controls sorted. Next, we need to limit it so it can't move left and right. So clicking back on our active, the properties will change to the active, properties of active, and going back to movement properties, the blue running man. And where it says directions here, we can click on any of these numbers or the little star, which represents the directions it can go. We're going to reset that to nothing and select up, which is number 8, and down 24. So there we go. We'll try that again. Run frame. If I move to the top, I still go off, move to the bottom, but left and right, I don't go anywhere. Great, I'm happy with that. So the next thing I'm going to do is go into my event editor, which is the picture which looks a little bit like a calendar, but it represents all the events we can add to the game. We're going to click on the words new condition to set an if. So new condition, if our bat or our paddle, called active at the moment, if we click on that, if its position, if we test its position, if it hits the top or the bottom of the frame area, that white box that we've got, then we want it to stop. You could choose bounce or wrap around, but we're going to choose stop for this example. So underneath active on that row, we're going to right click. If you double click, you end up in the event list editor, where you can still add an action, but it's far easier. Just for this tutorial, we're going to stay in the event editor. Click back there. Right click under active, movement, and stop. And like I said, you could choose bounce or wrap around play area if you wanted, but we'll do stop. And if we go back to the frame editor, just run the frame, because we're going to add player 2 in. Great, stops and stops. Now, we're going to add the artwork right at the end of this tutorial, but for the meantime, we're just going to quickly create something and then make player 2. So I'm going to click once on the active, so it's selected in a blue box. Then I'm going to click again, and then I get the resize options. So I'm going to pull up, and I'm quite happy with that size, so I'll leave it there. You can also do this in the properties window in size and position. If you type in, so if I wanted the height to be exactly 100, I could type that in, press enter, and it changes it. Now we'll edit the artwork. We can either double click or right click and choose edit. And let's clear this, and we're just going to make a blue paddle. So just using the fill tool and a color. And after clearing it, there we go. All right, I'm happy with that. Now, it's called active, which isn't a useful name. We're going to rename it to P1, and that's in the about properties. So click on the yellow speech bubble and click on where it says active, and we'll call it P1. Now, if we clone the object, right click and clone the object, we'll end up with P2. And I'll just move that to the other side of the screen. I've currently got my grid turned on, so it's snapping into place. It's just the option up here, grid setup. You can choose grid size and snap to. It just helps me align things quite quickly. Now we're going to right click and edit it, and this is going to be an orange paddle. Great. Now we also need to go into its movement properties and change it from player 1 to player 2. Now run our application or our frame, either. We only have one frame. If I press W, I can move that up. If I press S, I move it down. And I can't move left and right. And I can't move left and right for the orange, but if I move up, you'll see I've now left the screen. And move down, I've left the screen. That's because this is a separate object to player 1. When we cloned it, we made a brand new object with a new name. So the rules don't apply. That condition and the action on the event editor doesn't apply. So we need to code it in. Now, the neatest way of coding it in is to put player 1 and player 2 into a qualifier, into a group. So I'm just going to click and pull and select both of them. If they're too far away, you can click and hold shift and click to select both of them. And you'll see we've got a properties multi-selection because we've got P1 and P2 selected. So if we go to the event properties, you can see it says qualifiers. Click in the white space so that edit appears, click edit, and we can add them to a group. So we click add, and all of these groups don't do anything. They're just group names that are already pre-programmed in Clickteam Fusion. So I'm going to just say that they're players, this blue joystick. Press OK and OK. Now I'm going to go to the event editor. And rather than doing a new condition for if the orange player, P2, hits the top of the bottom, I'm actually going to replace all of the references to player 1 and replace it with any of the players. Now, one thing to point out, that this blue joystick here is the group that these two active objects are in. This black and this black joystick here represent the person playing the game. Player 1, the player playing the game, and player 2, the other player playing the game. So I'm going to refer to this one as the group player, the blue joystick. So I want everything that did, any rule that did apply to player 1 to apply to the group players. So I'm going to right click on the logo for P1 and choose replace by another object and choose the blue group player joystick. Press OK. It warns you that you can't undo, so just make sure that you're happy with what you've done. And if you are, press yes. And now you can see that we've got the rule that if any of the group players leave, any of the group players stop. And if I run my application on my frame either, you'll see that when I move up and when I move down, the condition is the same for both players. Perfect. Well, that's the first part done, so we'll save our work. File, save as, and we'll call it POING. And there we go. So we have the paddles. Now we'll add in the ball. So if we go into our frame editor, where we can insert a new object, and it will move, so it's active, press OK and put it down. We'll name it immediately. So if we go over to the About properties, click on active, and we will call it ball. Now, the ball's movement is bouncing ball. So quite simply, we go to movement and change it from static to bouncing ball. Let's make the speed slightly slower, maybe 40. And we'll take the randomizer down to 0. You can play with these settings, but leave the number of angles at 32 and leave the deceleration at 0, meaning it will never stop. Okay. Now, if we run our application, we'll see that the ball just flies off screen. In the same way that the players could leave the screen, the ball has no actions, no events set for leaving the screen. So we'll do a new condition for the ball, position, test position of ball, like we did before, but this time we're going to click on all of the sides. Ball leaves the play area. What we want to do is we want to right click under the ball and use movement bounce, not stop, but bounce, so it keeps on running. Run your application to test it, or run your frame, and there we go, bouncing away. You'll notice it travels straight through the paddles, so that's the next thing we need to adjust. So, new condition, if the ball collision with another object, the group player, the blue joystick, then we want it to bounce as well. So we'll right click under the ball, movement, bounce. We will run our frame or application either, and now we've got it bouncing off. Great. It's nice and simple. We're going to save our work and then we'll add in the scores. File and save. So we'll add in the rules for what happens when the ball leaves on the left or the right. So new condition, if the ball's position, test position of ball, if it leaves on the left, then at that point we want to add points to player 2 because player 2 is hitting towards the left. So right click under the black joystick and choose score, add to score 1. Okay. We'll do the same for the right, but for player 1 to get a point. Click on new condition, click on the ball, click position, test position, this time going to the right, press OK, and then underneath the player 1 black joystick, right click, score, add to score 1, press OK. We also need to reposition the ball. Now, because these rules run in order, the ball will have left the play area, it will have bounced, meaning that the angle it hits the wall will be reversed. as in it will reflect off the wall. So its angle has already changed. The direction angle, the direction it's traveling has already changed. So when it runs this rule and adds score, the direction is now going the opposite direction to where it was before. So we can just reposition it. So we can right click underneath the ball on line 4 here, and we're going to say position, select position. Now, if you remember before that we set our game to, we're going to change it to half of 858, which is 429, and then 263, center of the screen. And because we want to do the same for line 5, I'm just going to pull this tick, this action that we've created, down so it's on the same line to save us writing it out again. Okay, we could test that, but we're not going to see the scores because we haven't made any visuals to show it. So we're going to go back into the frame editor and we're going to insert a new object and we're going to choose score near the bottom on all objects, or you can get it from games, but it's score, not high score, but score. Okay, now this one's going to represent player 1. I'm going to change it in its settings to be player 1. That's fine, it's already there. But I'm also going to change in its settings to be text. Now, do you see it changed to be smaller and thinner? Well, it allows me to change the text options by clicking on the font, and I can set it to a bigger size. There we go. Now, I'm going to right click on the actual 0 itself and choose clone to make a clone copy of it. So I've got score 2. And then it's got all the same settings. So I want to change the settings to be player 2. Okay, I think we're ready to test. Also, I'm going to reposition this ball. Just now I know the center point. So I'm going to go into size and position after selecting it. And we know that the X is 429 and 263. So let's run our frame. And if it goes off this side, we should get a point for player 2. And if it goes off this side, oh, can I miss it? A point for player 1. Perfect. That's working well, but we'll play forever. So we need to set a score limit. So let's do that now. Now we could insert a counter as an object into the game, but all applications in their properties have something called global values. And this will be useful later on when we want to change the score limit. So the global values work across all levels. They don't get reset between level. So we'll make a new one and we'll double click where it says global value A, and we'll change that to say, we'll call it score limit. And we'll set that to 5. We'll go to the event editor and we'll say new condition that if player 1's, and the score is not these objects here, but it's the black joystick, compared to player score for player 1. If it is equal, and we'll say or greater, just in case for later on when we have some power-ups, we get more than the total score. If it's greater than, and then what we can do is delete the 0, and on the cogs, we can retrieve a global value, and we're going to retrieve the score limit, whatever the score limit's set to. At that point, we'll go to the next frame, right click under the storyboard controls, that chessboard, next frame. And we'll do the same for player 2. So a nice easy way is if we pull down the words onto the words, and now we can double click to change player 1 to player 2 and pull down next frame. Now, because we've only got one frame that's running, if we run the application, it will close. So if I'm running my application and I'll fast forward this bit, and let's check it. We get to 5 and it quits out. It will be going to the next frame. That works great. Let's save that file and save. Now, the game could get a bit boring because the ball stays the same speed. And if you're both good players, you'll be playing it forever. So let's add some difficulty in. What we can do is we can say that every time that the ball leaves the play area, that its speed increases. So we've got the rule that it bounces on this line 2, but if we right click on the same tick, we can add an extra action to it. So right click, movement, we're going to set its speed on the ball. And we're going to retrieve what the current speed is. So we're going to click on the ball and we're going to choose movement, speed, and we add in +1 to that equation. You could try it so it adds 2 or 3, but we'll start off with +1 and see how that goes. Also, when we collide with the paddle, ball collides with the player, it bounces, but we'll right click and do the same and say movement, set speed, ball, movement, speed, so speed of ball, and this time we'll +5 so that if it hits us, it goes back faster. Let's just try that and see the effect. So run the application. And you can see every time it hits us, you can see it's going a bit faster each time, and faster and faster. I think +5 is a bit too much. Deary me, it is definitely too much. So I think we'll maybe take it down there. So on line 3, we right click and edit that. That's +2. But whatever you feel, change it around so it suits your gameplay. Now, the issue is that when the ball leaves the screen, it just gets repositioned. So its speed will suddenly be as fast as it was when it went off. So the game will just get faster and faster and faster. And by scoring a goal, nothing is reset. So what we'll do is we'll add in another global value. So make sure you've got the application selected at the top and values in your properties window. We're going to add a new one, and we're going to double click on global value B and call it start speed. And our start speed, it's 40 currently, but let's try a really slow start speed, a start speed of 1, just so that we can check this works. So we know that when we score a goal, it's lines 4 and 5, leaving on the left or the right. So we set position, but let's also right click and choose movement, set speed to be, click on special and retrieve a global value on the cogs, the start speed. So it will reposition itself and slow itself down to whatever the start speed is. Now I'm going to pull that tick down so that both these conditions for scoring on the left or the right will set its start speed to what it is. So 1 for us at the moment. Run application. We're going a bit faster than 1 there. When we score, yeah, there we go. There's the speed of 1, chugging along slowly. Now, the reason that didn't start at our start speed is because the ball has an initial speed in movement here of 40. So we need to say that a new condition, storyboard controls at the very start of the frame, the ball, we right click, we can say movement, set speed, and do the same thing, cogs, retrieve a global value, start speed. And then that means it will start at whatever speed we've set, which is currently 1. Now, this rule, even though it's partway down, will run at the very start of the frame. Even though it's down here, it's green, it will be activated. It will jump to that line of code as soon as it's true. So at the very start of the frame. I don't like the tidiness of that in terms of the way that I look at my code. So I'm going to pull on number 8 and move it up to the top. That way I know for sure that when I'm looking through my code at the start of the frame is at the top. I'm going to change this as well, the start speed. I'm going to set it to, let's change it to 30 and run our application. There we go. Moving along nicely. So you've got yourself a very basic Pong game, but we're going to add some bonuses and some artificial intelligence or a computer player, some AI to play against if you haven't got a second player. So that's what we'll do in the next section. So let's save this file and save. So we're going to add in a power up back in the frame editor. We're going to have something visually to show that our paddles are able to fire an extra ball. And we'll trigger this when you're losing just to balance the game out. So we're going to insert a new object, an active object. we're going to click to put that down, and I'm going to rename it in its about properties, and I'm going to call this Power Up P1. I'm just going to change the artwork for it really briefly. So clicked once on it to get the resize squares, and I'm going to double click and clear it, and I'm just going to make it a yellow circle for the moment. And choose transparent, and I'm just going to make it hollow on the inside. Get a halo of some kind. Now, the hotspot, just going to make sure that's in the center. And then I will clone it as well. So there we go. We've got our things to represent that we're powered up, and we want these to always follow our player. So let's go into the event editor and new condition. On the cogs, click on them always. For power up for player 1, right click, position, select position, and it's going to be relative to player 1, P1. Okay. And then for the other one, right click on the power up for P2, position, select position, relative to, you got it, the second paddle P2, the orange one. Okay. If we run our frame or application either, you'll see that they're now attached. They don't do anything, but they're attached. So we want them to be invisible, and we're going to put it on this always rule because we always want them to be invisible unless they the scores are biased. Someone is winning by more than 3 points or more. So on the same tick, we're going to right click and choose visibility, make object invisible, and we'll do the same for the other power up. Right click, visibility, make object invisible, and you can select, just hover over the ticks, and you can see that you've added the actions in the right place. Great. So they're invisible, but we want to trigger when, new condition, when player 1 compares their score, if their score has got equal or lower compared to, let's delete that, player 2's score, -3. So if you're losing by 3 or more, so player 1 score is lower or equal to the score of player 2 -3. At that point, player 1 is losing, so will visibility make their sort of halo reappear. And we'll drag this down to new condition, and we'll just double click to change. Player 1 becomes player 2, player 2 becomes player 1. You can see 1, 2, 2, 1. That's fine. And we'll drag this tick diagonally across, so make sure it's underneath. If you make a mistake, you can always drag a blank tick over. So there we go, going to reappear. If we run our application, and I'm just going to use this debug window here, and I've got score 2 here. Let's change that to 3. And you can see the halos appeared, and because I started winning, halos disappeared, and because the score's different again, the halos appeared again. So that's working fine. And the debug window, if you haven't got your score listed here, you just click on that yellow star on the selection, and you can choose to add in your score objects. Game's finished. So that was a quick demonstration, but close your test application once you're done. So now that we've got it reappearing, once our score's lower, we'll add in the command to fire. So new condition, if joystick 1, joystick, read joystick state, this means that player has pressed a direction. Not that it's a joystick, we're playing with keyboard, but this just applies to that the player has moved in a direction. So that's when we press something. And if we choose to the right for player 1, we want to check that our halo is visible. So we're going to right click under on the words and choose insert. This allows us to add a second condition. And the second condition is if power up, if its visibility is visible, then we know that we should be able to shoot. Now, in Clickteam, you can launch an object. If you right click on your player, you can choose to launch an object. That object doesn't obey all of the commands and all of the actions, all of the conditions in the event editor. It works brilliantly for bullets, but what it does is it ignores the movement that is applied to the object. So we don't want to do that. We want another ball to appear, so we're going to create it rather than launch it. By launching it, it won't bounce around the screen. So underneath this option, the white box, shiny box, create new object, we're going to right click and create object. And we want to create a ball. And we want to select the player one, or click relative to player one as we did before. You can do it like that. And we want to move this target to be in front. So X will be about 40. Can maybe move it a bit further. 46, great. And Y0 meaning it's the same height as the center. Okay. But we want to make sure it's going to go in the right direction. So we're going to right click under the ball and we're going to choose direction, select direction. And I'm going to select all these directions and it will randomly pick one of those. Also, we want its speed to be set to fast because this is a power up. We don't want it moving slowly. So right click, movement, set speed, and let's set it to 100. Fantastic. We want to do the same for player two. So we're going to do that trick of dragging down. So I will drag player one moved right. And for this second one, I can't drag it over the top. It will replace it. I need to drag it on the number and see the little plus sign appear. That means it's going to add it in. So you can drop it on the number to add a second condition in. But we need to change them. Not player one, double click on that. Player two, not moved right, double click on that. Moved left. Okay. And not power up P1, double click on that. Power up P2. Now just because these are identical, check that player one matches and player two matches for its power up, because that would be annoying if they didn't. Okay, create object, right click, create object, and we want it to be a ball, and we'll do the same. This time it's going to be negative 46. Can I do it? I might have to type it in. So it's the same distance, but negative because it's to the left. And then in terms of set direction, we want to right click, direction, select direction. We don't want it 0. We want 16 all the way to 13 and all the way to 19. There we go. And don't forget to add in the speed. So on the bottom tick there, right click, movement, set speed, 100. Fantastic. We're nearly done. So let's run the application. But before we do, we're just going to, in the game settings, in the Alt4 values, we'll just change the score limit to be something much higher, like 100, so I can easily test the game. So if we run our application, and I'm going to change the score up to 10. There we go. And I've got the ability to fire another ball. So there's another ball. Haha, scored. So I've now got 2 balls on screen, and I can fire again because I'm still losing. And now I've got 3. I've got a lot of balls on screen. Now, fun as this may be, it's not what I want. I only want the ability to, I'm going to lose, or win. I only got the ability, I want the ability when there's 1 ball on screen to do that. So what we'll do is we'll add in a couple of extra, insert a couple of conditions. So we will say that, so looking at line 5 and line 6, we've got, if the ball leaves the play area on the left or the right, it assigns a score, but it also resets the ball. So we need to separate these actions from these lines so that we can check how many balls there are first. So we're going to right click on line 7 and insert a new event. That's going to give us a brand new line. And we're going to say, if the ball, if its position, test the position, if it leaves on the left or the right, and so right click and insert, and the amount of balls, so click on ball, pick or count, compared to the number of balls. If it's greater than 1, at that point, we're going to destroy it. Now we need to reposition it if it's less than 1. So right click on line 8 and insert a new event like we did before, and the same one. So the ball, position, test position, left and right. Now we will have already destroyed the ball if there's more than 1 of them. So there must only be 1 ball by the time it gets to this line of code. So at this point, we want to pull this tick and we're going to pull it all the way down to this square. So we're going to jump over this tick and let go here. And for these ticks, we're going to remove them, pull a blank one over the top, and the same. We're going to get rid of this one on line 5. And so we've broken it down. So if we leave on the left, we get a point, leave on the right, they get a point. But if there's more than one ball, it gets destroyed. But if not, it does what it always does. So test that out, run the application. Let's change our score to something large. Okay, so I can fire. There we go. And it goes off screen. And once it's gone off screen, I can fire again. And I can keep on doing that. Fantastic. Let's save that file and save. So let's add in some AI movement for player 2. So to start off with that, what we'll do is we will add in to our game, into the properties, we'll add a new global value. So make sure you've clicked on values in the properties window, click new, and we will call this AI skill. And we will set this to a number bigger than 0 for the moment. I'll set it to 20 and it'll become apparent why in a moment. Also, I'm going to scroll to the very bottom of the event editor. I'm going to click on the last number, which is 16 for me, and I'm going to insert a group of events. Now a group can be turned on and off, so I don't always want AI to run. So I'm going to call it AI for artificial intelligence. Not really, it's just a bit of code for up and down, but we'll call it AI. And in here is where we'll add all the code for the AI from 17 onwards. But we need to go back into the frame editor for a moment, and we'll need to right click on our ball and clone it, because we're going to make a version of it that the computer is going to be able to calculate from. So let's change this name from ball 2 in the about properties, and we'll call it ball aim. Also, just so that we can tell the difference between the two balls, I'm actually going to, in its display options, change its blend coefficient to make it transparent. Now this is a number between 0 and 255, so 128 is halfway. And so we've got ball and ball aim. They have exactly the same movements, and that's what's important. They're bouncing ball, and if I click here, bouncing ball, exactly the same settings, and that's what you need to make sure when you clone it. So I'm just going to, for the moment, I'm going to pop it outside there, out the way. And I'm also going to, in the runtime options, choose that it's not actually created at the beginning of the game. So we need to create it. So we're going to go into the event editor, and we're going to click new condition, and we're going to click on the timer, and we're going to go for every, and we're going to do it, take it from 1 second to 0. And we're going to do it every 15 hundredths of a second. It's going to run, and we're going to create an object, and we're going to create ball aim. And we will create that relative to the ball. So you can click relative to and choose ball. A few things we'll need to change for it. So we need to, under the ball aim, we need to set its speed and its direction to follow where the ball's going to go. But it's going to move a bit faster because we'll use it as a prediction for where the ball's going to go. So we'll right click and we will say that its direction, select direction, and we're going to calculate direction. And it's going to be whatever the ball, make sure it's the ball, animation, current direction value. Press OK. So it's now appearing where the ball is, and it's following, it's setting the direction to match. Now we need to set its speed, movement, set the speed to be whatever the ball's movement speed is, but we will add in that special global value, retriever global value of AI skill. So this is going to, the higher the number, the earlier the enemy is going to be able to predict where the ball's going to go. Now we need to add in a couple of conditions to help with the movement of the ball. So new condition, that if the ball aim position, test position, if it hits the top or the bottom of the screen, then right click under ball aim and movement and bounce. So make sure that's ball aim. So let's run our application and watch what happens. There we go. You can see where the ball's going to go before it does, that little trail. And you can see how quickly it gets there. So that's what we're going to use to allow player 2 to predict what's happening. Now, if you click on player 2 here and click in AZ for its values, we're going to add a new alterable value, and we're going to have that to be the Y aim. Now, I'm calling it the Y aim because it's up and down. So we're going to say a new condition that if the ball aim position, test position, if it leaves on the right hand side of the screen, then I'm going to right click under player 2 and choose alterable values. And we're going to set the alterable value of the Y aim to be whatever the position of the ball aim was. So it's going to take down, if it leaves at coordinate 300, it's going to have coordinate 300 there. So now it just needs to move to match that. So new condition, if player 2's position, compare its Y position to a value, if it is greater than player 2's value of Y aim, then it needs to move up. So we'll right click under the player and say position, set the Y coordinate. So we'll right click under player 2 and position, set the Y coordinate to be, if you click on player 2 again, the position, the Y coordinate, the Y position of player 2, and we need to move up. So on -8. And that will be a speed of movement there. We can see if that's good or bad, and we can adjust it accordingly. So I'm going to drag this down to the new condition on 21. So it's still in the AI group, but I'm going to double click on the arrow and I'm going to change it from greater to lower. I'm going to drag this tick down, this action, onto the line, and it's not going to be -8 because we need to move down the screen. We're going to plus. So right click and edit it and just change the minus to an addition, a plus. Great. Now, if I run the frame, see it heads right off to the top. Oh, there we go. It moved to adjust there. Let's see. There we go. Seems to be working fine. But it did start off going to the top. If I file a new, if I run an application, you'll see it heads off to the top. Now that is because the initial value of the Y aim, I close my test application, if you select player 2 and make sure you're in the alterable values, it's 0. So the Y value to the center, 2, 6, 3. Let's run the application. There you go, it's starting in the center. Now, can you see that we're getting some weird pulls just appearing in the corner of the screen? Now that's just a little quirk with Clickteam. Because we've got all these objects leaving screen and going off places, it's trying to reposition them back into the game. It thinks it's losing them, but we need to just make sure that they're destroyed. So what we're going to do is click on new condition. If the ball aim position, test position of ball aim, if it's outside the play area, then you can destroy it. So under ball aim, right click and destroy, and that will solve that. The little juddering is because the aim might not be divisible by 8. So you could solve that if you want to by quickly saying that there has to be a difference of more than 8. So you could say if it's greater than this +8 and lower than that -8, or whatever your position is changing by. You could even set it to be a variable if you wanted, so that you can change it so that you can increase the movement speed of the player. But 8 works quite well, I feel. Let's run the application and test it out. So when I hit it back, it'll slide nicely into position. Now we'll need to turn the trail off because we can use the trail to help us as well, the same way that the computer can. And we'll also need to make it so that we can't move player 2. So if I try and move player 2, it's kind of juddering about. So we need to disable it. So first of all, for the ball aim, all we need to do is click on display options and turn off visible at start. And there we go, it'll be invisible now. But still, all the code will work fine. The next thing we need to do is we need to see if player 2 is playing. So if player 2 is playing, then we want to disable the AI. So we'll say new condition that if if the global value of AI skill is greater than 0, so a skill level has been set, then at that point we want to right click for player 2 and player control, ignore control, so that player 2 can't move. We also want to make sure that the AI runs. So what we'll do is we'll right click on just special conditions, and we will say group of events, activate AI. And then all we need to do is disable AI at the start of frame. So at the very top, where we put start of frame, let's go to group of events, deactivate AI. You can also, if you double click or right click and edit, there we go, you can turn it off from being active when the frame starts. You can choose whichever way you feel works better for you. So if we run our application, there's the AI working fine, and we can up the number for the AI skill to see it work better. But what we can also do is we can, if we go into the application, if we change it to 0, we should disable the AI altogether. Yep, and now I've got freedom of movement. Fantastic. Let's save our work, file and save. Just a quick addition that I forgot to add in, that the AI won't use its bonus when it gets to it unless we add this line in. So let's add it in. A new condition that if player 2's power up is visible, visibility is visible, then let's insert, and on the timer and let's set it to a random amount, maybe 3 seconds, in between 5 and 2 seconds, then we want player 2 to launch the ball back. So what we're going to do is we're going to nick this create object. So we're going to pull it down from line 15 and pull down the ball there. And there we go. Then it will actually attack back at us. So this line, just those simple things that it's going to, when it is visible, every 3 seconds, if it can, it will launch the ball back at you until there are 2 balls on screen, and then it won't be able to do it until there's only 1. Great. Give that a try. Back to the game making. So now we're going to upgrade the looks of the game and add some sounds in. So if we go into our frame editor, might need to click on frame 1 first before you can go back into the frame editor, and we will change the ball. So we'll edit the artwork of the ball. If you right click and edit, and we're going to import, and we've got an animation in the assets of the ball. You can draw your own, but if you import it as a sprite sheet, make sure that's selected at size 24 by 24, change those numbers. And the hotspot definitely needs to be in the center for it to work nicely. So it will animate through, and if you choose direction options, we can choose a loop. And there we go, we get a kind of stroby, trippy effect on there. And then we've got the same for player 1 and player 2. If you right click and edit, you can import. This time, when you import player 1, it's a block size of 16 by 90, and definitely hotspot in the center. Again, direction options loop. You can have a look at that and press OK. And notice it's changed the size of player 1. So you might need to adjust and move a few things around. Player 2 will quickly import the same. and it should save the settings 16 by 90, hotspot in the center. And you can position things. Power-ups, if you import those, they're size 50. 50 by 50, 50 by 50. And loop. And the same, exactly the same for power-up 2. Oh, but make sure in the direction options, you loop. Okay. So we run our frame now. We will notice that we missed something out. So when you do that, the ball aim, not that the player 2 is running at the moment, but the ball aim needs to be adjusted as well. So I'm just going to import the ball 24 by 24. That's fine. And it doesn't need to be a looping animation. It's invisible, but as long as the hotspot's in the right place, then it will match. So just make sure that the ball and the ball aim are the same image. That's great. Now, Pong's normally played on a black background. So if we click on frame 1, we can just set the background color. I'm going to set it to a dark gray. We can add a center line. We can also, if you click on the scores here, you can click on text options and change the color to something that fits the game a bit better. And you can make all adjustments in that and make it look however you want. But I'll just show you how you add a center line. If you insert a new object, it's called a quick backdrop. Here we go. And a quick backdrop is a solid block of color, and we can just click on size and position, and we can set its width to maybe 5 pixels and its height to 525. And we can type in its X position, or even better, we can just go to arrange, align in frame, horizontal center, and then it'll be exactly there. And for player 1 and for player 2, I can select them both again, and I can arrange, and I can align objects or align in frame, vertical center. There we go. And they'll start off in the center. Yep, so play with that and add all the bits you want. And then when you're happy, save your work, file and save. So we're going to add in 2 more frames. Now the free edition of Clickteam Fusion only allows 3 levels, 3 frames. So we'll be using it all up. We're going to go back to the storyboard editor where we started. And we're going to click on the number 2 to create frame 2 and number 3. And then we're going to shuffle them around. We're just going to pull on frame 1 into the center, and now we'll name them. This is going to be the start screen, and frame 1 is the game, and frame 3 is the ending screen. So for the start screen, we're just going to add a few things in, and in the next section we'll show you how to change the settings. So click on the number 1 to go straight there, or select it and go into the frame editor. Now for my start frame, I'm going to select it here. I want the background color to be that dark gray as we had before. And we want to put some text in here. Now text is called a string object. So insert a new object and choose string near the bottom there and click to put it down. I'm going to put it in the gray area because it's black and it'll be hard to see. And I'm going to change text options, and I quite like Gill Sans. So I'll choose Gill Sans, nice and big, 48, and press OK. But the color, we want it to be white. Click on the box and stretch it, and you should be able to see, there we go. There it is. And let's title the game. So I'm just going to press Control A to select it all and write POING. And there we go. Now we need some options to start the game and maybe to quit. So we'll insert another new object, another string object again. Now, if you want to use exactly the same font, you could just clone this string, or you can set a new font and have a different title. Let's do this one to Homer and white. Click on the box, stretch it out, and double click to change the text. So let's say start and quit. In the event editor, let's add some code in. New condition, the mouse, user clicks within a zone. Left button single click, and so I'm just going to drag the box round and put it around the start. And if they do that, then we're going to right click and go next frame and pull it down to new condition, double click on it. Okay, I'm just going to move this box down to quit. If we move to quit, then right click and end the application. So if we run our application now, we can press quit, it quits. If we run our application, not the frame, but the whole application, press start, we start. Now the game started quite quickly there. And in Clickteam, if we click on the frame itself, and in the fade in transitions there, we're going to click edit and just choose a standard fade, 2 seconds. And the game won't run for those 2 seconds. So if we run the application and we click on start, it allows everyone to get ready. But did you notice it did show, it didn't hide those power-ups. So I'm just going to press the plus arrow to see all of the objects. And for the power-ups, I'm going to make it so they're not visible at start. And that way, when we run our application, we don't have those ugly circles. There we go. And the game starts. Let's have a look at the end frame. So if we go double click on that, let's change the background color of the properties of end. Let's get set the same color. I'm going to just drag in from my start frame string, and I'm going to change it from saying POING to saying game over. And I'm going to drag in my string 2 and say replay. Oops, replay or quit. And then what we can do is we can say new condition, that if the mouse user clicks within a zone, and we just select the area, much as before. If we're replaying, if we click on replay, we want to right click under storyboard controls, and we can go to the previous frame, or we can jump to frame and choose it, but we'll go to previous frame, and then we'll drag that down again like we did before, right click and edit, press OK, let's put it on quit. If we click on quit, right click, end the application. So this way, if we run the frame, if we run the frame, it's going to quit either way, because if we run the frame and it goes previous frame, it'll quit. But anyway, we can test that out. You can run your whole application and play through. Let's save that file and save, and then we'll do the options. So we need to go back in the start frame to add the options. So if we click on the start and then go to the frame editor, we're going to use something called a list. Now, a list is a really quick way to allow some selections to happen. If we click insert, new object, and down here it's just called list, and click to pop it down. Now we're going to have 3 different lists. We're going to have one for the winning, when you play until you win, one for the AI of the computer. So let's clone this, set it to 1 row and 3 columns, so we get 3 across. So this one we'll rename, and we'll call it AI, and then this one, the starting speed. We'll do that. Now, lists are quite simple. You just double click to create your option. So for winning, we can say first to 5, first to 10, first to 25, first to 100. And those are the options we'll have. For the AI, we double click, we'll have no CPU, and then we'll have easy, medium, hard, and then maybe nightmare level. And then finally for the start speed, we can have it slow, medium, fast, and lightning. Let's have lightning as the fastest speed. So there we go. Now, those options, when we run our frame, we can select them, but they won't actually do anything. So let's just let's set that up. What we'll do is we'll use the alterable values in these lists to set things up. So with this list, we've got first to 5, 10, 25, and 100. So we're going to click on the winning list, go to its values and press new. And we're going to create 4 to represent the 4 different options and type out the number value. So 5, 10, 25, 100. And then the same for the AI. So we know that on this list, we've got no CPU. That's going to be 0. Then we've got easy, medium, hard, and nightmare. Now you can play with these numbers, but these all represent how quickly the ball aim travels faster than normal ball. I'm going to say 10, 20, 30, and 40 for that one. And then finally, the start speed, slow, medium, fast, and lightning. Now we set our speed to around 40, 30 as well, 30 and 40. And that was probably medium. So I'll say slow is maybe 20, then 30, then fast being 50, and then lightning we'll set to 100. There you go, might as well. And we've got those options. Now we need to link them together, and that should be quite simple. So in the event editor, we could say new condition, that if the selection has changed, so this is going to be a little bit complex. I will explain it, but don't worry if you don't understand it. So we changed the winning option. So under special conditions, we will change a global value. We will set the score limit to be whatever the winning and value by an index, the altful value by index, meaning the number 1, 2, 3, or option 4. Now, we're going to take it from, if we right click, the current line number. So if we click on the first option, it will be 1. If we click on the second option, it'll be 2. Now, the thing that you've got to know is that lists count from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 upwards. Altful values count from 0. So altful value 0 is actually the first one. So we actually just need to type a -1. I know that looks crazy complicated, but all we're saying is select the altful value number, whatever the list is, -1. So let's try that out. So let's run our application. And if we open the global values, click that, we get 5, 10, 25, and 100, because that's what the global values are. Great. So we just need to do it for the other 2, and we're nearly there then. So new condition, if the AI selection changed, and this time change a global value, we want to set the AI skill to be the same thing. So let's go through it again. Values by index, altful value by index, and we want to find out whatever the current line number is of AI, but we want a -1 from it. And then finally, we'll do the same for the starting speed. So selection changed, change a global value. That's what we want to do. And we want to set the start speed to be the value, altful value by index of whatever the current line number of start speed. Make sure all lists look the same. So make sure you've got it saying start speed -1. Great. So if we run our application, we can say first to 5, a nightmare CPU playing fast. Press start. Let's see how it is. Well, I'm winning for a bit. Don't know if I'll win for long. All right, let's just throw the game. I think I need to make Nightmare a little bit faster than that. So let me just adjust those settings. And all it is going into AI, going into its altful values. And yeah, let's say 100 for that. And let's say 60 for that. And let's say 30 for that. So now we've adjusted those, run the application again, play with those numbers, see what works. So say first 5, Nightmare, we'll do it lightning fast. Gosh, it is fast. That's too fast for the computer as well. No, it's starting to. And there we go. What we can do is we can add the scores on this to show who's won. But if I click replay, you'll notice that the scores have stayed the same. So it quits. So that's one thing that we need to change. Let's go back into the game and go into the event editor. And we want to say at the start of frame, right click score, set the score, player 1 to 0. We'll pull that across. And finally, on the end frame, let's add in the score. So I'm just going to pull in from the game, score 1 and score 2, so that we can see. And also I could color them to match. So I could make it, this is the blue player score and the orange player score. There we go. That tidies that up a bit. But you can play with the settings and get something that works nicely. You can also change it so that the player 2 can move faster than 8 pixels. But finally, I'll just show you how to add the sound. So let's save it, file and save. And just so that the selections match, we want to say new condition. At the start of the frame, we want to select the top option. So right click on the winning one and say set current line to 1. And we'll just drag that over so that it selects the default options. If we run our frame, all the top options are selected and it's ready to play. Great. So there's not many sounds in the game Pong, but I'll show you how you can add some in basic to the game. So if we go into the game and go into the event editor, the main noises is when the ball hits the top or bottom of the screen. So we could add that in. So a new condition, the ball, position, test position of ball. If it hits the top or the bottom of the screen, then sample, play sample. Let's browse, let's find it. And we've got wall. So let's add that in. But in Pong, you have it that the sound increases in frequency, as in pitch, when the ball's going faster. So let's try doing that as well. Because if we just run our frame now, it's okay, but we want it to increase with pitch. So we right click here, we can have a go at changing the sample's frequency right at the bottom, near the bottom of the list. And we want wall and okay. Now we want to set it to around 60,000. But we want it to increase when the speed of the ball increases. So we need to add to it. Now, the ball will increase to a maximum of 200, a speed of 200. And so we want to add to it the speed of the ball. So the ball movement, speed. So, and then we want to times that by about 200. So as the ball increases speed, so will the frequency. And let's just also say that when we score, so we've got when the ball leaves the player on the left or the right, then we could play a sound. So right click under the samples, the sounds on line 8, I've got it, play sample, browse from a file, got score. A little fanfare there, and also when it hits a paddle, so line 4 here, when a ball hits the group player, samples, play sample, and let's browse and let's choose paddle. So now we run our application, so save your work, and that should be pretty much it. You can start refining things off. You can play your game. So I'm going to play against a hard version on medium, but enjoy poinging. If you have any problems, contact us. And as always, all the assets and everything's available on our website. So take care. and enjoy. POING.